Welcome to the Beauty of Breathing podcast, where we explore the wonders of optimal breathing. I'm Renata Nehme, a dedicated mom, entrepreneur, and myofunctional therapist committed to embodying the principles I advocate. Having recently undergone a tongue-tie release and palatal expansion, I'm thrilled to guide you through the transformative journey of embracing the beauty of breathing, effortlessly and through your nose. Let us know how much you enjoy the show by leaving us a review. Ta-da! We're live. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Beauty of Breathing podcast recording over here on Maya Moves on Instagram. And for those who register, you can listen to all of our podcast recordings live. So today I have presenting Campbell Will, an integrative physiotherapist specializing in the role of breathing in human health and performance. His experience spans ICUs, neurosurgical wards, elite athletes, and private practice, where he recognized breathing as a commonly overlooked factor in both performance and dysfunction. Through his holistic multidisciplinary approach, Campbell helps practitioners shift their focus from disease to health by restoring balance to the body, mind, emotions, and energy. You guys already know how much I'm going to love this. He believes that breath is a powerful tool that to everyone and a foundation for lasting health and well-being. Today's topic is physiology of anxiety. Ta-da! Welcome to the Beauty of Breathing platform. How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Renata. I'm really excited to chat.
Thank you. And oh my gosh, you are in Hawaii.
Yes, we've lived here for about 2 years.
So one of the best places for you to be able to embody all of this.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, there's definitely a special energy here.
So what first led you? Actually, before I ask my first question, tell me a little bit more about yourself. Where are you from? How did you get into this field?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Australia, a little town called Cairns. I went to school for physiotherapy there. I started working, and then I met my now wife, who's from the US. And so that started this kind of like not being in one place. And that was kind of the same time that I was looking to, well, how would I take physiotherapy outside of a hospital where I won't be able to work anymore? And that was really my introduction into breathwork. It was kind of it was something that had interested me for a while. I went down and did the Wim Hof training. And that really just like opened up this box, Pandora's box, and a rabbit hole that I've just still been going down. You know, that was probably 10 years ago.
That is amazing. So Wim Hof, I know that in the airway field, we learn a lot about potato, and Wim Hof is like completely the opposite.
Yes.
How did you feel when you first learned about it?
It was, I've definitely kind of like, I wouldn't say moved on since then, but I've broadened my horizon, put it that way. But I'm very well, you know, it was a really awesome introduction to what breath can do. You know, hiking a mountain in the snow, just wearing a pair of shorts, it blew my mind, right? I'm from the tropics. I used to just like, if it was a little bit cold, I'd be wearing a sweater, you know, it's like, and here I was like hiking in -5 degrees, just wearing a pair of shorts and feeling fine.
Are you serious? It is actually possible?
It was. And until I did it, I would have thought like, this sounds a little bit out there. But there I was like hiking up this mountain, and it wasn't like just grit your teeth and bear it. Like I was warm. I was having fun. It was connected. Like it was this really, really eye-opening experience about the potential that we have. From there, it kind of like, I wanted to know more about the physiology. I wanted to know how this worked, why it doesn't work for some people, you know, and that kind of just threw me into this world of the nervous system. And from there, I kind of put together my own kind of approach that really looks at treating dysfunctional breathing first, right? To kind of like restore that to an optimal state. And then from there, we can kind of use breath as this really powerful tool, whether it's to increase our energy, regulate our emotions, manage our stress. It's one of these kind of as weird as it sounds, does everything, as long as you're kind of applying it with precision.
Very good. Well, what first led you to explore the connection between breathing and then anxiety?
Honestly, it was not a intentional exploration on my part. It was more clients coming to me. You know, patients coming and just struggling with anxiety, and then us seeing like, wow, this really works, right? Like a lot of the clientele that I was working with at that time, who who struggle with anxiety were like, this is the first thing that's actually made an impact on my anxiety. And so that just kind of like told me that there was something there. And then I just kind of like kept going down that path. And again, no, it wasn't something I chose, but now predominantly, like I would say 95% of the clientele I work with is for anxiety. Those that don't want to go on medication, that want to manage it holistically. And I've just found breathing to be such a critical piece. You know, like I'm yet to find someone who struggles with anxiety that doesn't have dysfunctional breathing. You know,
my next question. You just answered it. It's interesting that a lot of times in this airway field, they talk about body posture, which we know the body posture will affect negatively your breathing if you have bad posture. But also the posture automatically triggers anxiety. You know, that whole posture of you having your shoulders rolled forward, being in this crunched up position, your body already sees that as something not great.
Yeah. And to make it even more tricky for people, Renata, like if anyone's watching this on Instagram right now, I could almost guarantee their posture is head forward, shoulders rounded. Like it's not always this postural dysfunction as much as it's an environmental influence. You know, we're on screens, we're at desks, we've got chronic stress, we've got back pain, like all these things shape our posture. And then our breath kind of conforms to that shape. And now we have these two big drivers, right? My nervous system kind of listening to the way I'm holding my body, rounded, defensive, protected. And that's forcing me to breathe up into my chest, shallower, faster, stimulates the nervous system. And so it's really hard for people to escape something that they're doing 20, 25,000 times a day. And oftentimes is just a result of their environment. I think that's a really important part for people to understand, because a lot of people go, well, like, why did my breathing break? You know, like what happened? And it's usually not just like something happened. It's, oh, you might sit 8 hours a day at a desk, and you might spend 5 hours a day on your phone, and you might have been through this period of chronic stress. And those things go on to kind of shape the way that we breathe. And then that baseline shifts. And if I'm breathing, you know, fast, shallow, up into my chest erratically all day, like I'm going to feel anxious. That's not a dysfunction, and it's not a disorder. It's a perfect response from our nervous system based on these inputs that are saying, hey, something might happen out there, right? This threat. So like anxiety is the correct response in a lot of those situations. We just need to kind of help someone understand, how do we like rework that relationship between like my posture, my breath, and my environment, because that has the biggest impact on my nervous system.
How old is your youngest patient?
Youngest patient, probably 5. Okay. I don't work with a lot of kids, and I've kind of made a rule that if I'm working with a kid, I'm also working with mom and dad.
I love that. That's how it should be my functional therapy too.
You know, it's such a, like, if a parent's coming to me saying, hey, my child is anxious, you know, and I want you to teach them these exercises, it's like, well, what are they modeling and what environment are they in? And is there a way that instead of the child has to fix this problem, this could be a little family exercise, right? We could all take time and regulate our nervous systems. Because more often than not, you know, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brushstroke, but more often than not, the anxious child has an anxious parent. And so like, how can we change that modeling at home rather than just like, we're only going to give exercises to the kid? Like, let's all do this together.
That is so true. And I was even discussing with a colleague not long ago about we need to understand what kind of environment that child lives in order to make sure they're going to be good candidates for myofunctional therapy. Because I can see them once a week, once every other week. However, if they're not in a very supportive and comfortable and safe environment at home, these exercises are going to be the last thing they're going to do, the last thing in their mind. You know, they're just trying to survive, make sure they get a good meal and not, you know, get in the way of parents fighting or whatever else can be going on. So very, very important that the whole family is kind of aware and invested in whatever they decide to do. That's such a good advice. From a physiological standpoint, what happens in the body during an anxious state?
So I always like to kind of like almost come at it from the other side, right? So like the experience that someone has, right? If you ask most people to describe their anxiety, we get a pretty common set of answers. My heart's racing, right? It's hard to breathe, or I can't take a full breath. Maybe I get clammy. Maybe my palms get sweaty. Maybe my mind races. These are descriptions of physiology, right? Like, so if we then take one step back and we say, well, what drives heart rate to increase? What drives the feeling of air hunger, what drives an acceleration of brainwaves, right, is breathing. And so like if you and I right now, or anyone listening, started to breathe fast and shallow for the next 30 seconds, our heart rate's going to go up, our blood pressure will increase, our brainwaves will accelerate, right? We're going to start to feel what we would call anxious. And so if we look at it in that direction, we can kind of reverse engineer and be like, okay, well, what would happen if I was able to influence the driver of that state rather than looking for the external cause of my anxiety, right? A lot of people think like my anxiety happens to me, right? Something out there, a social situation, an environmental thing that makes me feel anxious. And that's a really disempowering frame, right? If it's something out there that's making me feel anxious, there's not a lot I can do about that except remove myself. But if I look at, hey, there's something out there that causes me to change my physiology, which then drives me to feel anxious, that little in-between step is really important, because guess what? We can control our physiology. And so a lot of people oftentimes lack the awareness of what they might be doing internally, right, physiologically, that could be contributing to what they call anxiety, right? Someone with social anxiety that holds their breath when they walk into a room, but doesn't know they're holding their breath, right? That changes the chemistry of their blood, that provokes a response from their system, which might be like, I got to get out of here, right? And they go, oh, this environment makes me feel anxious. But they didn't realize that the environment made them hold their breath. And it's actually the breath holding that's actually changing the physiology, that's making you feel like. And so when people have that, like, oh, wait, and we can kind of what I call walk upstream and find out, hey, what are you doing before you walk into that environment? Are you hyperventilating? Are you holding your breath? Is your breathing really erratic? Are you bracing? Because if we can catch that and then give you some intentional kind of cues and practices, then maybe when you walk in that room and you're not holding your breath, you don't actually have that spike of anxiety, right? You might not be 100% comfortable. I'm not going to paint that picture, but it's like that shift isn't often enough for people to recognize, okay, what else do I think gives me anxiety? Like I work with a lot of mums who started having panic attacks when they were driving, right? Like really anxious, really panicked to get behind the wheel. And with all of them, right, an hour before they even get in the car is when it starts, right? They start breathing faster, they start bracing, they start anticipating, what if I have an anxiety attack while I'm driving? Now I'm scared. So all of this feeds forward. And the moment they sit in the car, like anxiety is more or less a sure thing at that point, because we've been driving our physiology for the last hour without even knowing it, or maybe the last couple of days. And so like, I think the biggest skill for people to develop is awareness. It's like, how does my breathing change when I'm thinking about the social situation, driving the car, going to the meeting, whatever it might be? And then that's my opportunity to actually do something about it, rather than now I'm anxious, what do I do?
Because that's usually what people do. They just want a fix to that immediate symptom, but there are so many things that happened before that led to that.
100%, and I think this is just a cultural or social phenomenon. Like we usually wait until something's broken before we try and fix it, and so that idea of like, now I'm feeling anxious, what do I do? Well, it's a lot harder, like we're making our own job much harder to try and recover from anxiety versus prevent myself from feeling anxious.
What do you think is the biggest issue right now in children's lives that it's impacting their anxiety levels compared to when I grew up? I'm not going to say you because you're way younger than me. When I grew up, 20, 30 years ago.
People don't like to hear it, but I can't help but point at technology. Like I think we're probably in a similar, like I grew up riding my bike and climbing trees, and like we didn't have the internet.
Oh, you were in Australia and I was in Brazil, so it does make sense there.
Yeah, like I remember when we got dial-up internet when I was like 14, and it's like we were able to use that thing for like an hour each day, and I had to fight with my brother. It's like most of the time it wasn't there.
Yeah.
The world that our children and adolescents are growing into today is a very different world that you and I grew up in, and that everyone grew up in. Like I think we can try and think of like, oh, well, the technology, the stimulation, the phone, but it's like, it's so much deeper than that, because now parents are more stressed and there's more financial stress. So maybe mom and dad are working 2 jobs and they can't afford a babysitter. So then out comes a device, right? Those devices didn't exist 20 years ago, right? We had to make do, and perhaps the stresses and the pressure was different. So I think it's hard to just point at like, oh, it's a phone or it's an iPad or it's technology or screen time. I think it's this whole big picture where, yes, we are moving away from nature, social connection, towards indoor artificial light on a screen. We can then point to artificial food. We can point to sleep disruption, right? I think it's this like, this breeding ground of a bunch of different factors that are culminating in why children are finding it so hard to focus, right? Why we've had this massive explosion in what we would quote unquote call ADHD. And I think there's other ways to look at that. I think maybe you and I agree there.
Yeah.
But we're always looking for this smoking gun, right? Like, oh, what is the cause versus I think it's more the way that we're living. And I would mirror like the rates of anxiety and ADHD and behavioral dysfunction in children is like, we're seeing the same thing with anxiety and depression in adults, and it's like, it's a byproduct of the way we're living. We have this,
sorry, go ahead.
This kind of unsustainable pace with attached technology. We are kind of pushing these really important aspects of our physiology away, like sleep and recovery. Right? Like there's more stresses because of the hyperconnectivity, right? Most people, it's something like 86% of people, the first thing they do when they wake up in the morning is check their phone. That's a really new phenomenon, right? Like, and I don't think we comprehend how my nervous system responds to being connected to 8 billion people. And guess what? News is never positive, right? So it's like, I'm attached to this thing, right? We evolved in tribes of maybe 200 to 400 people. And now I'm connected to 8 billion people constantly 24/7. Of course that impacts our nervous system.
And I heard something about as soon as you wake up, if it starts scrolling and having that every 3 seconds or so dopamine release early in the morning, then you're more likely not to have the normal dopamine release throughout the day when normal life is happening, and you're less motivated. You don't have, burnout happens way more. You don't feel excited about doing things at work anymore. So another thing that we need to think of, I actually started purposefully not touching my phone anymore after I wake up for at least an hour. I just have to do my morning routine. I have to make sure everything is in place. I have to do my prayer. I have to do my worship music and my tea or whatever, supplements, everything that I usually, have to do in the morning. And it has made a big change already of the way that I feel, the way that the rest of my day goes. But you mentioned something. Oh my gosh, it's life-changing. Really, it's just simple.
Like with all the clients I work with, I try and implement what I call a sacred 60, which is exactly what you just described. But I say the last hour of the day, the last 60 minutes should be a sacred time. And the first 60 minutes, right? So like, let's say you want to go to bed at 9:30, 8:30, your phone goes in airplane mode. And you don't touch it, right? It's done. So that last hour of the day, your nervous system actually gets the opportunity.
That gives me a little bit of anxiety just saying it. Right? Putting my phone in airplane mode.
I want to kind of walk through this because a lot of people will have the same visceral reaction that you just did, like, oh, wait, I need my phone before I go to bed, right? But the same thing when I wake up in the morning and that phone's already on airplane mode and it's not within reach, right? And I get the opportunity for my nervous system to transition slowly, right, into wakefulness. And same at the end of the day, into restfulness, right? The first few days that people do it, and I usually get people to start with 30 minutes rather than 60, but 60 is a good goal to build up to. But what we think, right, that first day where I'm like, oh my God, where's my phone? Or what am I going to do before bed? That is just it's my nervous system seeking what's familiar, right? If I use my phone before bed for the last however long, couple of years, right? As soon as I take that away, my nervous system is going to seek it. The same way that you just described, like when people use their phone in the morning, that seeking of dopamine throughout the day is because of how did we get dopamine first thing? I touch my phone, boom, little burst of dopamine. My brain is going to keep seeking that same form of dopamine, right? It's like, that's why I'm going to check my phone 50 times today. It's because the moment I get bored or the moment my brain's like, oh, where did I get that easy dopamine earlier? Grab the phone, right? But if I don't have that opportunity, we have this adaptation that occurs. For most people, it's like 3, 4, maybe 5 days where it's kind of uncomfortable. But then I adapt. My nervous system stops seeking the phone because I've broken that little chain of events. And a lot of times people like day 1, day 2, there's no way I could do this. Like I'm going to white knuckle my way through it every day for the rest of my life. It's like, no. Just give it like 2 or 3 more days and then you won't even remember the feeling of wanting the phone or needing the stimulation. And so just giving people that idea that it's like, yeah, it might be a rough couple of days, right? Where there is a adaptation occurring. But as soon as that happens, like the quality of sleep changes, the quality of your morning changes, your energy throughout the day changes, your stress levels change. And it's like, you'll never look back.
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. When I first started, again, exactly how you mentioned, it was like, oh my gosh, what the heck? And the problem is not even to me personally. The problem is not even like scrolling on Instagram. That is my problem. However, in the morning, it wasn't really the issue because I've trained my algorithm to just give me positive things, um, personal growth messages and worship and, Bible verses and things like that usually help me, yay, upbeat, let's get going. The problem is that I work a lot on my phone, a
Mhm.
lot. So the
Yeah.
second that I get there, I'm already seeing the messages coming through that are for, related to work or other things that do bring anxiety. And I spend a lot of hours on my electronics, unfortunately, because again, I have 5 assistants. They mostly live out. So I'm always, contacting them and making sure everything is running in both of the companies. Um, but it can bring a lot of stress. What I have to keep reminding myself is that it's still going to be there.
Yeah.
It's okay. Their question is going to be there. I'll be able to answer when I can. Nothing is going to change. If somebody has to wait 60 extra minutes to get a response from me, it is okay. It is a-okay. So that
And
it
that's
has.
it's a really important point, because when we again, I think we've kind of fallen into this, what I would call like an unrealistic or unsustainable expectation that
Yeah.
I need to be getting back to someone the moment. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
this didn't used to be the case. When I tell people to put their phone on airplane mode, they're like, but what if someone can't contact me? I'm like, what do you think people did 20 years ago, 30 years
Yeah.
ago? What if you went to the movies, or what if you went to, it's like people
Yeah.
couldn't contact you. They left a message
Yeah.
and you got back to them when you got home. It's like this adoption of technology, we've forgotten that we didn't used to have it and it wasn't a problem then, but we've got so
Mm-hmm.
used to it. And again, the pace of, I need to get back to people immediately. A lot of the times when I chat with clients about this, they're like, but what if? And I'm like, really, let's play the what if game. Like, what if you didn't get to the emails until 9 o'clock versus 8 o'clock? Really, what do we think is going to happen? They're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess when you break it down, like sometimes it's a ungrounded fear. Like, we
Yeah.
think that, oh, there's no way I could do that. But if we actually sit with it for a couple of minutes and talk it through, and maybe that is setting a boundary, or maybe that is notifying my team or my assistants and say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not logging on until this time. So are you able to check messages at that point? Right. But more
Exactly.
often than not, it's just an agreement with myself. And it's like, it won't burn down. It'll be okay. It's like
Yeah.
that extra hour is so important for your nervous system, so
Yeah.
that the rest of the day you're actually more engaged, more steady energy, better focus, because your nervous system has an opportunity to warm up, right? And
Love
to
it.
then be in this mode of action
Mm-hmm.
and execution, rather than I woke up and bang, there's inbox. There's, oh my
Yeah.
God. Now there's all of this,
Stress.
these open tabs in my brain. I've got to get back to those 3 people. I got to send an email
Yeah.
to the assistant. And it's like, you haven't even had your tea yet, right? Or your
Exactly.
and it's like, there's already 8 things swirling around in your mind. It's like, that costs you in terms
Yeah.
of resources and terms of load for your nervous system. So
Yes.
people
And
think,
even
oh,
my
it's in
kids.
the back of my mind. But it's like, there's a cost to carry those unmade
Mhm.
decisions and those tasks that you have to do, versus approaching that, now
Mhm.
I'm ready to turn on. When I pull down the top of my phone and I take it off airplane mode, I'm ready, I'm prepared to engage, versus bang, it just kind of hits me from,
Exactly.
and now I'm in it.
Yes, and even my children in the morning or before bedtime, again, if they want my attention, and I'm already busy with something else, I'm not fully there.
Yeah.
I can be there presence wise, but my mind is already somewhere else, and it's not healthy for them because they feel it.
Yeah.
You mentioned ADHD as adults. Um, can we talk a little bit about ADHD and how different is it from kids to adults? In the airway field, we usually say 60 to 80% of children that are diagnosed with ADHD or they're taking ADHD medication actually have sleep disorder breathing, which is disordered breathing during the day and during sleep. Do you think that's similar to adults? What do you think could be the
I
cause?
personally do. The broad research hasn't been done as much as it has for children, but we know the prevalence and the rates of dysfunctional breathing. The problem is that there's not really a clear diagnosis or diagnostic label
Mhm.
criteria for what is dysfunctional breathing, right? We can say, oh, it's mouth breathing, but is it mouth breathing 80% of the time or 100% of the time or 50? Like, it's chest breathing. But again, it's like chest breathing's appropriate if you're exercising really hard. So it's really hard to create these criteria of like, what is dysfunctional breathing? So I think it just gets missed a lot of the time. Like, the way that our medical system works is it's very built on labels and diagnostic criteria and classifications. So because we don't have one for, okay, you have dysfunctional breathing, it just gets kind of swept under the rug, right? And we look at symptomology.
Can we use the same for ADHD?
I think it is, right?
Right? Like, so what is the definition? Because
this to me is like the bigger problem is the way that our system works, right? Is we take a set of symptoms and then we match it to a label or a diagnosis. And based on that diagnosis, we get given a treatment. The treatment is designed to get rid of the symptoms, right? So the whole model is to suppress or eliminate symptoms. But if we actually shift our thinking and think symptoms are messages, right? They're prompts. They're a body talking to us and asking for change. And so just like a fire alarm goes off in a house, we don't just rip out the fire alarm. We look for the fire, like, trying to eliminate symptoms is the same as trying to rip out the fire alarm instead of looking for what is lighting the fire. Where is the fire? And so when we look at the symptoms of ADHD, right? And then if you look at the symptoms of sleep disordered breathing or sleep apnea, they're the same, right? And so because of this classification of like, you have to have this label, which now means you traditionally get this medication, we're not really looking at causes. We're looking at symptoms. So we're not looking for a corrective model of how do we restore the system to its optimal state so that the symptoms stop being expressed. We're just trying to get rid of the things that we call symptoms.
And I think that, as you were saying, our lifestyles are so different now than they used to be. So in my personal opinion and professional opinion, there are so many adults nowadays with ADHD. Oh my gosh, I see people posting all the time. Oh, this is what is wrong with me. Finally, I was just diagnosed with ADHD. But then again, we are overstimulated to the max. And this is not how we used to live before. Human beings were not designed to be able to receive this much input constantly. Because whenever you look at the symptoms, almost everybody has some of those symptoms. Like, yes, I'm very forgetful. Yes, I can't keep up with whatever. I lose my stuff, or, I procrastinate, whatever some of the symptoms are. But I feel like at some point, everybody nowadays can relate to a little bit of ADHD symptoms. And I truly believe it's just the change, or including, the change of lifestyle that we have now with so many things going on at once, and we just can't keep up.
Right. I could not agree more. Like, I wholeheartedly agree. And again, like, right now, when people identify with this label, like, it's kind of framing, it's like we're broken. We're the problem, right? There's something wrong with me that I can't focus, that my energy's all over the place, that I'm fatigued. And it's like, well, when we start to see like how many people can identify with like, oh yeah, like you just said, like, I forget stuff. I find it hard to focus. I find it hard to switch off at night. I'm using my phone too much. It's like, maybe this is a byproduct of the way that we're living, not a personal flaw. Like, there's not something wrong with our biology. It's responding exactly as it's designed to an environment that we were never meant to inhabit. Like, our nervous system evolved in a completely different environment to the one we live in today. If you look at anthropological studies, if you look at, genealogy, it's like, it was more or less the same for about 2 million years. And in the last 50 years alone, right? Technology, internet, artificial light, travel, artificial food, industrial farming, like, that's just 50 years. But go back 500 years, again, there's a blip on the radar to human evolution. And it's like, yeah, the world was largely the same for 99.9% of evolution. In the last 50 to 100 years, we've completely flipped it on its head. And then we see this massive spike of anxiety, depression, suicide, autoimmune, lifestyle. It's like, we didn't just break, right? We're responding to an environment that we're living in. There's a massive mismatch of our nervous system and our human biology and the environment that we live in. But the problem that we're going down this pathway of pathologizing our response to our environment is like, there's not really an upside to that. Like, we're just going to have more people diagnosed with more labels, taking more medication, and not actually looking at, hey, maybe we need to change the way we live, not just continue to medicate ourselves. or like pathologize ourselves. Like maybe I do need to create a boundary between myself and my phone. Maybe I do need to make time to get sunlight on my skin and in my eyes and touch the ground and be in social connection. Like without those things, in my mind, it's pretty simple to see why we have, you know, a 50% increase in anxiety in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
It's pretty clear, but we're just like, we're writing more prescriptions. There's more medication being taken, but we're not seeing the rates of these conditions come down. To me, like that is one of the most glaringly obvious signs that we're not doing it right? If you look at the rates of prescription for depressant medication, anxiety medication, they are just on an upward trend.
Wow.
We're not seeing a downward trend, right? If the medication worked, the more that we prescribe it, we would see a reduction.
But they don't fix depression, right?
The same rate. So it's like, it's evidently like the solution isn't to medicate ourselves for some proposed imbalance of our brain chemistry, right? Which has now been kind of debunked, right? It was just a big marketing thing. Maybe the solution is actually listening to our body and saying, hey, my body's expressing all these symptoms or messages. What do I need to look at in terms of the way that I'm living so that my body can stop expressing these symptoms?
And I cannot unsee the fact that Apple, and I love Apple. I have every Apple product that you can think of times 10. I'm a huge technology nerd. I love that stuff. First time things come out, I'm the first one to get it. I'm one of those. But I just cannot unsee the fact that it's an apple and it's a bitten apple. And what happened in the Bible, we were all in paradise. And all of a sudden somebody bit an apple and we're out of paradise. We're stuck in this, other place in the real world with tons of issues. It's just, I can't unsee that anymore.
Now I can't unsee that. I've never even thought of that, but it's like, that's a really interesting kind of like piece to look at.
Yeah. Why do you think it's a bitten apple?
Yeah.
I mean, his kids were not allowed to use iPads and look at,
it's such an interesting, like that aspect of like where technology is going. I saw an article yesterday of like some AI companies pledging $2 billion to cure all disease. I was like, this is interesting. What is it? It's looking for more medication, right? It's looking for more. That's not medicine in my mind. No. That's this modern version of symptom suppression. And so again, like the incredible tool that is artificial intelligence, right? It's like we're still directing it in the same damn direction, right? Yeah. Which is like, oh, how do we suppress symptoms? How do we find better drugs to better suppress the symptoms of our body saying this is not sustainable? It's just backwards in my mind, right? Like we can't out-medicate a bad lifestyle. It's that simple, because our lifestyle is what we live 24/7. The same way that you can't out breath work a dysregulating lifestyle. Like someone doing 10 minutes of breathing exercises a day, but living the other 23 hours and 50 minutes in a state of urgency and multitasking and rushing like they're on fire, like that 10 minutes ain't going to cut it. We need to change the way you live, right? Like,
thank you.
Breath-based tools are great, right? I'll stand by them, but behavioral change is also equally important. Like, and I think we're, again, just the byproduct of the system is we think, oh, well, if I just do these 10-minute exercises, I can continue to live in an unsustainable pace, right? If I just take this medication, I continue to do the things that are perhaps provoking, like why my system is responding this way, instead of what is a little bit, quote unquote, harder is to actually address, hey, the way that I'm living, right? Like my lifestyle might be the actual cause of these symptoms. This might require me to address the way that I'm living rather than just like try and do some corrective exercise every now and then.
Exactly. Oh my gosh, you're preach. And I have so many other physiology questions and things like that. So maybe we're going to have you come back on the beauty of breathing. So I'm going to use the last few minutes that we have to talk a little bit about some practical tools for our listeners. If someone is listening right now and feels anxious, what is the first thing they should do with their breath?
With their breath, I would encourage people. The common answer is change it, right? Slow the breath down. I would encourage people to start by observing, right? Is by just being with their breath, right? There's a really key question I encourage people to ask, which is, what is happening? What am I feeling? Rather than why am I feeling it? Our mind is a meaning-making machine, right? So my body expresses a set of symptoms. My heart might be racing, right? There might be tension. And my mind's job is to understand, why is that happening? So my mind will come up with lots of different stories. Oh, it's because you said that silly thing on the podcast yesterday. It's because the meeting you have tomorrow, you don't want to, it's because the investors, it's because it's going to look for a meaning to make up, to attach to, this is why you're feeling that. So when we get stuck in, why am I feeling anxious, right? Our mind's job is to give me a reason. And it's going to bring up all the things that could be making me anxious. The fight I have with my partner, the argument I have with my kid, right? It's like, all of it's there waiting to say, this is the reason you're anxious. When we shift that question away from why am I feeling anxious to what am I feeling? Okay, well, I'm feeling my heart racing. I'm feeling my shoulders are tense. I'm feeling my jaw is clenched, right? There are things that I can do about that. I'm feeling that my breath is fast, or it's shallow, or it's tight, whatever it might be. In the act of noticing, right, we are shifting what part of our brain is active. So we're going away from the meaning-making machine to interoception, right? To inner awareness of like, here's what's going on in my body. I'm sensing rather than interpreting. And in that act of sensing, we will naturally tend to see, it's like, now that I'm aware of my breath, it usually will almost slow itself down. I don't need to control it. It's like, hey, oh, whoa, it's really fast. That's faster than it usually feels. It starts to rewrite itself. Oh, I'm aware, whoa, my heart is pounding out of my chest. Sit with that. And I just noticed that maybe it's not so loud, or maybe it started to slow down. So before we jump into like controlling our breath or fixing it, is like, what's actually happening right now? Not why is it happening? Not what label am I giving this? What am I actually feeling? And in that act of noticing, there's an opportunity to notice, oh, my shoulders are tense. Oh, well, what would happen if I just drop my shoulders? My breath is held. Okay, what would happen if I sighed? And I went back to a slow breath. And approach this through the lens of curiosity. You know, what would happen if, rather than like, oh, I need to fix this, right? Which is control. So that idea of like
more anxiety.
Right? Exactly. Because we can't, like, we're not a machine that we can go, oh, we'll just flip the switch and now I'm not anxious. Right? So if the two questions that people remember is, what am I feeling, not why am I feeling it? And curiosity, not control. Oftentimes that's going to give us this little recipe where things will just like take a little step down. We're never going to go from high anxiety to completely calm in the space of 10 seconds. Our job is to go from high anxiety to a little bit less, and then a little bit less, and then a little bit less. And then maybe over the course of 5 minutes, I'm like, whew, I'm on more stable ground now, right? And then I might be able to identify, what was it that was making me feel anxious? Oh, right, this pitch, this meeting, this argument, this thing. It's like, okay, so like now I can use this lovely brain that we have, right, to think of, this is what the cause was. So next time in the same situation, what can I do about it? Versus again, I don't know why I'm anxious. I'm just anxious, right? Like the amount of times people will say to me, I'm just an anxious person. It's like, well, what can we do about that? You know, like just because you've been an anxious person doesn't mean you always have to be an anxious person, right? We have an opportunity to kind of like write a different program into our nervous system, but it takes awareness and it takes practice.
Yes, I mean, that's amazing. Talking about breathing, if you guys have not tried intake breathing yet, that's something that I usually recommend to all of my patients who have nasal valve collapse. So the way that you can test it, you can look at yourself in the mirror and take a deep breath in. If you notice that your nostrils slightly close, that's called nasal valve collapse. So any types of nasal dilators will really help open up that little valve, and all of a sudden you can breathe better. I just posted a reel, and it should be in my stories on my own moves right now. Or you can go under partners. Anyways, you can find it out there. They're little magnets that you put on your nose, and they have different sizes of these things that go around your nose, and it opens up your nostrils. And I always thought that like, oh, the small one is for me, you know, and somebody's a little bit bigger or the bigger one. But I tried the different sizes the other day, and I was amazed of how much more it opened my nose because it was a bigger size, and how much better I could breathe. There's so much that can impact your breathing. That was one of the questions that I got recently. Well, didn't you fix your airway after you had palatal expansion? Well, it could be hormones, it could be allergies. There's so much more that can affect your breathing. So take a look at intake breathing. We have a link for you guys with a discount in MyoMove. So go run and get that link so you can try it yourself. And I'm going to start wearing to the gym now. I want to get a clear one so I can wear it to the gym and see how much that's going to change my workout. Before I ask you the last question, Can you tell us a little bit, how can people find you? Where are you? What is your Instagram?
Yeah, so best place to find me is Instagram, Breath Body Therapy. I really just like, to me, is just what I would call the applied science of breathing. Changed my life 100%. It makes me a better dad. It's just one of these tools that I think is a missing piece for so many people, right? It's like this understanding. And I've spent 10 years teaching breath work, and I think the clearest way to describe it is it's a tool of self-empowerment. It's like, it's not someone telling you what to do. It's like you learning about your own biology. Oh, when I breathe like this is how I feel. Breathing we actually have this respiratory print, right? Like the same way that everyone has a unique fingerprint, we actually have a unique breathing print as well. And so if anyone kind of like tries breath work and thinks, oh, breath work doesn't work, that's kind of like, it's like, well, maybe that wasn't the right type of breath work for me. Maybe the way I was engaging in that breath work needs work. So like, if you ever feel that like breath work doesn't work for you, I'd encourage you to rethink that, and perhaps follow along, ask questions, and really kind of understand, like, how do I need to use my breath, right? That is a very unique, individualized question. That's like, we need to go beyond, oh, just do box breathing or just breathe slow. It's like, but how you do that matters, and when you're doing it and why you're doing it and what your past patterns are. Like, there's so much to be said for, like, our breathing is shaped by everything, right? Like you were just pointing out, whether it's hormones, whether it's sinus infections, whether it's postural, whether it's stress, whether it's learned patterns, like there are so many factors there. And so I think the more that people can kind of just like start to see, hey, my breath is this really important input. It kind of tells my nervous system what state to be in. It is in charge of how much energy I can produce. And it is completely up to me. Like, I can shape it. I can change it. I can modify it. I can train it. And so that should be really like a call to action for a lot of people. So if you feel as frustrated as Renata and I do about the medical system, it's very built on suppressing symptoms, well, take charge of your own breath, take charge of your own health, right? Take that personal responsibility on of understanding how your body works, because the more that you know, the more confident you'll feel, the less uncertainty, and like all these things go on to change your nervous system.
Oh, that's beautiful. Last question. Can you walk us through a simple breathing exercise to regulate the nervous system?
Cool. We're going to do this. We're going to do a sigh of relief, but, right? So I just want to kind of point out, we have all these inbuilt tools, right? A sigh, a yawn, anytime my breath changes, this is my nervous system attempting to self-regulate. But again, culture, society, right? It's like a lot of people have gotten trouble for taking a sigh, right? Oh, and then so what? Are you bored? Are you upset? It's like, and so there's this like kind of bounce back where it's like, oh, that thing, like I got to suppress it. I've got to make it quiet. I've got to protect. I've got to not let it happen, right? I remember getting yelled at in school for yawning, right? Yawning is like my brain trying to reset itself. It's like, it's a really important part of my nervous system for all of us. And it's like, if you got in trouble for that, like I still catch myself trying to suppress a yawn, right? Because I'm in public or whatever it might be. And it's like, hey, this is my nervous system literally attempting to regulate. So we're going to take a sigh, but we're going to make it a really intentional sigh.
Okay.
The first part is we're actually going to start by exhaling, not inhaling. Most people have a lot of air left in their lungs just at rest. So if I try and take a breath in, I'm kind of filling up the top of the lungs. Like first, we're going to empty the bucket out. So when everyone just to breathe out, slowly like you're blowing candles out on a cake. And you're going to keep going until you feel kind of like the abs kind of engage a little bit. Now I'm empty. You're going to close the lips and you're going to silently breathe in. It's going to be slow. It's going to be full, right? It can be a nice big breath. We're going to pause at the top and we're just going to notice the tension, the shoulders, the chest, and we get one opportunity just to let it fall out. And like, let there be a noise. I'm going to do it one more time and then we know the steps, right? Okay. So we're going to exhale first. We're going to empty the bucket, gently breathing the air out of the body. Now we've created space, slowly and silently through the nose. Little pause at the top just to notice, and then just really letting it fall out with a little bit of a sound. And then take a small pause at the end and just let the natural breath kind of find its way back in.
I love that. I do feel more relaxed. That's so
right. And the amount of times, if you did that 3 times, right? The next time that you felt a little overwhelmed, a little stressed, a little anxious, instead of like, oh, I got to do 10 minutes of breathing, what if I just took 3 sighs of relief, right? the first one is not going to be very good. It's going to be like, oh, that was so. The second one, you get an opportunity to like, how do I make that a little softer, a little heavier, a little more effortless, right? And it's usually the third one that really kind of lands for the nervous system. And so just I'd encourage people today, right? Even if it's just today, try that. You can try it 3, 4, 5 times today, where it's like, oh, I'm noticing something. Let me just intentionally give my nervous system a message, right? We don't sigh like that when we're running from a tiger. We never have, we never will. So my brain is going to respond really predictably to that pattern of breath. But oftentimes, again, it's been kind of shaped out of me because I'm hunched over a desk or I'm in an office and I can't, make that noise. And so sometimes you got to practice and like reinstall the sigh. And you do that, and all of a sudden you have a tool that's really effective.
I love that. Thank you so much, Campbell. That was such a good time over here in Beauty of Breathing. I've learned so much from you. I totally want to schedule again for you to come back for us to get a little bit more technical.
Let's do it. I'm excited to do that.
Thank you. Everybody have a wonderful day. And as soon as I hang up right now, I am going to do 3 more sighs of relief. I really like that.
Me too. And I think everybody else should as well.
Yes. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day, everybody. Make sure you're following us and all of your favorite podcast platform, Beauty of Breathing. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining us on another insightful episode of the Beauty of Breathing podcast. Make sure to join the conversation on our Instagram page, Myo Moves, and continue exploring the fascinating world of airway health with us. Until next time, let's breathe deeper, live fuller, and discover the beauty in each breath. Quick disclaimer: the Beauty of Breathing podcast has been produced for entertainment, educational, and informational purposes only. All of the content, views, and opinions shared by our hosts and guests should not be a substitute for medical advice. Please consult with your healthcare professional for any medical questions.